The Kiseki series, which is translated as the Trail series in English, heavily builds on shared plot lines and complex political intrigue across many games. Since Ch.3 relies even more so on understanding the happenings of the arcs and characters in previous games, I'm starting this series of detailed but still condensed summaries that fans could return to if you're short on time to replay them yourselves. Now let's hop right into the second Sky game. Trails in the Sky second chapter begins with Estelle waking up in a room at Grancel Palace. It seems like a pleasant morning at first, though she quickly remembers what happened the night before and rushes to the garden terrace where Joshua left her. She finds her father Cassius there, where he tells her about the Society of Ouroboros and how he first took Joshua in, even after the young boy's assassination attempt on his life 5 years prior. Cassius recalls that all those years ago, Joshua swore that if the Society ever contacted him again, he would disappear from the Brights' lives forever. Cassius tells Estelle he's sorry, then basically tells her to forget about Joshua. Estelle is furious at her dad and screams that she hates him before dashing off. It begins to rain as Estelle exits the palace. She tells herself that Joshua must have returned back to Roland, so she hops on the next flight back to her hometown. Aboard the passenger aircraft, Estelle meets a man who claims that he is a priest. He introduces himself as Kevin, and though he flirts with Estelle at first, he begins to understand how shaken she is when she breaks down in tears. Once she's calmed down, Kevin explains a bit about his role in the Septian Church. He claims that he's a wandering priest that was sent to teach Sunday school to rural areas. Estelle shares very briefly about her situation, and Kevin grows serious. Since the church allows priests like him to work flexibly, he decides to accompany Estelle to Roland just to make sure she gets home safely. When they arrive back at the bride's home, Estelle checks every room in the house for Joshua and comes to the realization that she's just been deluding herself. Estelle collapses on her knees defeated, though Kevin helps her realize there is still hope in finding Joshua. Her dad and Shara then enter the room. It so happens that Father Kevin notified the guild branch about Estelle's location. Cassius apologizes to his daughter and says that he's counting on her to bring his son back home. Fast forward about a month and the setting shifts to the Bracer Training Lodge in the Lehman State, home to the international headquarters of the Bracer Guild. Here, Estelle and Annalise are finishing up their morning sparring match. The girls have breakfast, then Kurt, a senior bracer, arrives and puts them through a training session in some old sewers that were repurposed for guild use. They face off against Kurt at the end, then head back to the lodge to eat dinner and prepare for the final day of their training program. In the middle of the night, Estelle is awakened by loud noises. Annalise enters her room and says that the guild lodge is under attack. They both rush downstairs just as Kurt, who appears severely wounded, enters from the front doors. He says that this Jaeger attack may have been staged by the Society. The Jaeger Corps is a major mercenary group known throughout the entirety of Zemuria. A sword-wielding Jaeger breaks in through the back window and engages Annalise and Estelle. The two girls manage to keep up with him, but a woman dressed in the same assailant attire appears with a smoke bomb containing sleeping gas, knocking the two girls out. The girls wake up in nearby St. Croix forest next to an empty tent. In order to escape the forest, they must face the female Jaeger from last night. Estelle and Annalise make it back to the guild lodge and find that the orbital phone was destroyed, so they can't call for reinforcements. The engineer informs the two that the Jaegers kidnapped Kurt and are hiding out in Grimsel Fortress located to the west of the site. The girls leave the engineer to work on fixing the phone while they go scout out the fortress themselves. They arrive and make their way through a series of blocked doors and rooms that require night vision goggles. When they finally reach the last room on the top floor, they encounter a spear-wielding Jaeger unit who they haven't encountered before. After a very tough fight, they manage to push him back, but Estelle and Annalise raise suspicions about the familiarity of this particular Jaeger's fighting style. It turns out the entire situation was a ruse put on by Kurt, Karna, and Grant as a final test for the girls as a culmination of their bracer training. The three veteran bracers congratulate them, and after a celebration dinner, Estelle and Annalise prepare to head back to Grancel the next day. The scene shifts to an unknown location in Liberal where some of the Ouroboros members are meeting. A figure who goes by the name of Campanella has returned from Erebonia, where the Society put on a ruse to keep Cassius busy elsewhere during Colonel Richard's coup attempt. Together with Lowe and Wiseman, they vaguely discuss some of the Society's future plans. Next, we see the Capua Sky Bandits in what looks like a completely decimated town. It turns out it's the remains of an Erebonian village called Hamel, the same place that Lieutenant Lawrence is said to be from. Joshua is the one responsible for freeing the Capuas, and they are now working together. Again, the scene shifts to the ruins under Gransel Palace. Captain Schwartz leads Father Kevin to the place where the group took down the massive archaism in first chapter. Kevin's real mission seems related to searching for the Aureole. Now back at the Gransel Guild branch, Guild receptionist Elnan requests that Estelle, Annalise, Shara, and Agate go and recover any information that they can about the society within the Liberolian Kingdom. At this point in the story, the player can choose to partner with Shara or Agate. This kind of player choice makes for some great replay value, especially considering how the dialogue differs in the Trails games depending on who is actively in your party. I personally chose Agate on my first playthrough. Estelle and Agate part ways with Shara and Annalise as the two girls depart on an aircraft to Roland. The prologue comes to a close as Estelle and Agate depart to the seaside city of Rouen. The two arrive in Rouen and check in with Jean at the guild house. He informs them that a number of people have made troubling reports of a ghost sighting around the city boundaries. Jean lists 3 main witnesses that should be asked for their testimonies and leaves the interrogations to Agate and Estelle. The first witness is the mayoral candidate and hotel manager Norman's son, Belden. It's said that he recently joined the Ravens, the delinquent group otherwise known as Agate's old gang before he became a bracer. We reunite with Rice, Dean, and Rocco in their old warehouse, but there's no sign of Belden. Estelle and Agate must defeat the 3 leaders to get information about Belden from them, and it turns out that he's been hiding out in his family home after getting spooked by the ghost sighting. They visit Belden and get his testimony, and next up is a soldier at Erletten. After receiving his testimony, and just as Estelle and Agate are about to leave, they encounter a young girl and her parents who are foreign traders visiting Liberal. They seem like a really sweet family, and they chat for a bit before heading off to Mercia Orphanage. Arriving at the orphanage to ask for one of the kids' testimony, Estelle and Agate get to see the completely reconstructed orphanage building for the first time since last leaving Rouen. The matron tells the two to meet up with the kids in Minoria Village, where they are currently in Sunday school. At Sunday school, the two are reunited with none other than Father Kevin Graham. They all return to the orphanage together and ask Polly for her testimony about the ghost sighting. The 2 bracers head out while escorting Kevin back to Rouen. Quite surprisingly, he's a skilled fighter and arts caster. They part ways with Kevin and are about to report back to Jean when a fight nearly breaks out between the 2 mayoral candidates' campaigns on the bridge. Just as it seems like they're gonna have to step in, Olivier shows up on a boat playing his lute. He successfully placates the 2 groups somehow, and the campaigns head their separate ways. Back at the guild, Dorothy has also managed to capture a ghostly picture on camera. They match up the witnesses' testimonies and figure out that the ghost was always seen heading in the direction of Genis Royal Academy, so that's where they all head next. Here, Estelle reunites with Chloe, and the group splits up into pairs to ask the students if any have seen the ghost. Estelle teams up with Chloe, and they make their rounds of the school. After a lot of questioning with no luck, they finally meet 2 students who have seen the ghost. The 2 girls return to the student council room to report their findings to the others when Estelle spots the ghost through the window and promptly faints from shock. When she comes to, she, Agate, Olivier, and Chloe, along with Dorothy, head to the old schoolhouse where Estelle saw the ghost heading off to. The team must solve a series of riddles before they finally reach a statue that moves to reveal a hidden passageway underneath. Dorothy is told to stay at the entrance for safety as the rest of the team makes their way through the tunnels. They eventually reach a room where they meet one of the society's enforcers for the first time. In a truly spine-chilling first encounter, they are introduced to Enforcer 17, the Phantom Thief LeBlanc. He reveals that the gospel in his possession can create holograms of the user, which explains the ghosts that many citizens have been seeing. He then summons a huge mechanized archaism that the group must defeat. The 4 defeat the machine somehow, but are paralyzed by one of LeBlanc's crazy abilities. Olivier gets into a ridiculous argument with LeBlanc about the nature of beauty that somehow buys enough time for Dorothy to arrive and save everyone with her flash photography. LeBlanc is surprised but bids adieu and vanishes, leaving the group with nothing to do but to report back to the guild house in the morning. The scene cuts to LeBlanc and Lo on top of the warehouses in Rouen at night. They discuss the success of the experiment in Rouen and how the Gospels are just the tip of the iceberg, according to the professor. Suddenly, they both take notice of a presence hiding behind some crates and are about to attack the eavesdropper, though it turns out to be some drunk Raven members staggering back to their hideout. This was a lucky break for a certain priest, since it was actually Kevin who was eavesdropping. He comments on the Ouroboros enforcers to himself, which is quite suspicious since the existence of the society is not widely known information. After the scene ends, we transition to Chapter 2. After saying goodbye to their friends from Rouen, Estelle and company board the airship to Zeiss. Estelle makes her rounds throughout the ship again, talking to every passenger before they land. Right after they disembark the aircraft, an earthquake strikes Zeiss. They immediately head to the guild house and reunite with receptionist Kilika. Oddly enough, none of the other areas within the region report feeling earthquake tremors. Kilika requests that the group investigate the strange earthquakes, as one struck the region just the other day but was only felt at the Senkheim Gate. Prior to that, they check in with Professor Russell and his granddaughter Tita. The group updates the professor on the gospel hologram experiments in Rouen and about the society's activity in general. They then head out to question those that experienced the other earthquake. Various soldiers are questioned until Private Henning shares that he noticed a mysterious man in sunglasses walking up the road around that time. Just as they're leaving the Senkheim Gate, the CWO of the Wolf Fort rushes over, claiming that an earthquake had just hit their station. The team investigates the aftermath of that earthquake by questioning the soldiers there as well. One private recounts seeing a tall man wearing sunglasses on the roof the day before. A maid in the kitchens also saw this man and began following right behind him to the second floor, but when she turned one of the corners, he completely vanished from sight. The only other place he could have gone was out on one of the observation areas on the side of the fort, but when she checked, no one was there, and the drop to the ground is much too high for anyone to jump. Returning to the guild, they find that in the meantime, Professor Russell had been developing earthquake detection technology that can read the flow of septium veins in the ground. He asks the bracers to install the detectors in 3 specific areas of the region. Tita comes along in our party to help with the installation of the devices. First area is a hidden spot on the Trat Plains. Tita sets up the device, but right before she's able to turn it on, the team is ambushed by weird sheep since the septium stored in the device attracts monsters. They're successfully fought off, and Tita turns on the device, which happens to contain a mechanism that repels monsters. Next spot is a section of the Caldia Tunnel. They install the device without any hitches, but on the way out, the group comes across Shara and Annalise, who are continuing their own investigations into the society. Annalise has a long moment ogling over Tita and her cuteness, since it's their first meeting, then the two groups part ways. Final location for device setup is Leiston Fortress. The team just happens to meet Cassius here. Tita mentions that her grandfather has found an unexpected hint about the Gospels. If Olivier is in the party, Cassius thanks him for taking time away from his own mission to help out. Estelle and the group arrive back at Zeiss Central Factory to check out what kind of info Professor Russell can glean from the reports back to the Capel, a high-tech data analyzing machine. Suddenly, the readings from the devices spike, culminating in an earthquake that strikes Leiston Fortress. Fortunately, Cassius was anticipating the quake, so no major damage or chaos occurs at Liberal's military headquarters. Professor Russell figures out that something is controlling the flow of the septium veins in order to precisely target areas with earthquakes. With the data collected, they piece together that the source of the disturbance is coming from Elmo Village. Mrs. Mel greets them at the entrance to the village, claiming that they're already experiencing a major problem. The water for the hot springs is boiling over and is much too hot for the villagers' and tourists' needs. Unlike the trouble in first chapter, the problem has nothing to do with the pump, so Mrs. Mao asks the party to investigate the source of the hot springs. She gives them the key to the back gate, which is used to access the caves behind the village. Once inside the caves, the group explores and makes their way further and further into the tunnels, avoiding the dangerously hot geysers all the while. Finally, the group reaches the back of the caves. The person waiting to greet them is none other than the man in the sunglasses. He introduces himself as Walter the Direwolf, Enforcer 8 of Ouroboros. He has planted some sort of device that runs the Gospel's energy into the ground, which has been the cause of the boiling water temperatures and earthquakes throughout the region. He summoned some ancient underground beasts called abyss worms with the device, and it's up to the group to take them out. After observing their battle, Walter is disappointed that the party is so weak. He strikes them with a single blow that knocks them all to their knees. Walter says that he should go hunt the runaway Joshua instead, since he'll put up a better fight. Estelle, obviously angered, barely stands up and would have lost her life to Walter if not for Sieg, Chloe, and Zin, of all people, who arrive in the nick of time. It turns out that Zin and Kilika have a past with Walter, who takes his leave after Zin's arrival. Back at the guild, everyone together concludes that the Gospels are able to enhance the capabilities of other orbital devices. Professor Russell, Chief Murdoch, and the rest of the ZCF make researching the Gospel their priority, since they have now completed the Arcee's new engine. As for Estelle's party, Kilika informs them that they have been formally requested by the military stationed in Gransel, so the group prepares to head off with Tita and Zin in tow. Chapter 3 begins with Maintenance Chief Gustav and the rest of the ZCF crew touching down in Leiston Fortress to install the Arcee's new engine. In the meantime, an amazing sparring match occurs between Captain Schwartz and Cassius. Newly promoted Lieutenant Colonel Sid prepares to transition from command of Leiston to the Gransel region. Back to the Bracers, Estelle and the others take off from Zeiss. During the flight, Zin shares about his past with Walter and Kilika with Estelle. Walter and Zin were both students of Kilika's father, who was head of the dojo, which taught the Taito fist style of combat. Walter was expected to be the successor of the dojo when his arrogance began catching up with him. Walter reveled in the aggressive side of the Taito style of combat, adopting what is called the murderer's fist. Kilika's father challenged him to a fight to the death as Walter was preparing to leave the dojo and follow that path. Zin was an observer of the match and witnessed Walter cutting down their master in victory. Zin has been searching for Walter ever since, but not for revenge. There's something that Zin just wants to confirm. The group lands in Gransel, noticing that the Arcee has already gone to Leiston Fortress for the new engine installation. At the guild branch, they rendezvous with Elnun, who informs them that a formal representative from the military will discuss details with them in person, since they wish to avoid any prying ears through telephone communication. In general, the military in Gransel is currently charged with protecting the foreign dignitaries who have arrived to sign a non-aggression treaty proposed by Queen Alicia. Nations will agree on paper to seek peaceful negotiations before resorting to force. Elnun receives a call from a butler at Herb Royal Villa, requesting aid from the Bracers in finding a lost child's parents. The group arrives at the estate and finds that Butler Raymond has already lost track of the girl. It turns out that she began playing hide-and-seek and has become lost again. It's up to Estelle and company to search the entire royal manor for the girl. After searching every possible hiding spot, the group returns to tell Butler Raymond that they failed to find her. But Estelle ends up finding a kid hiding right under the bar counter in the exact same room. The child turns out to be the same girl that we met back at Erletten a couple chapters ago. She somehow knew Estelle was the bracer who would come, so she wanted to find a good hiding spot and have a fun game with her. She says that her parents told her that they had some important work to do and that they would be back to get her at the manor after they were done. So the bracers decide to take Ren into their custody and pursue the search for her parents. They all arrive back at the guild to find Lieutenant Colonel Sid already there, serving as their military representative. Ren and Tita head upstairs while the rest get down to business. Sid requests that the guild look into the host of threatening letters that were sent to all dignitaries and involved parties in the treaty signing. Agate takes the civilian agencies, while Estelle, Olivier, Zin, and Chloe together all head to the Erebonian and Calvard embassies, Gransel Palace, and the Liberal News to question about the letters. The mission from Sid also serves as a good opportunity to question all the international branches about Ren's parents, since they are foreign travelers, Harold and Sophia Hayworth. Ren and Tita head off to explore the palace city, while everyone else deals with work. Estelle and company meet Ambassador Cochrane officially at the Calvardian embassy. Though she personally opposes the treaty, she will fulfill her duties and sign it as the President and Parliament of Calvard has already decided on. The ambassador's chief suspects are the Warhawks in the Erebonian government. Additionally, the group learns that in exchange for signing the treaty, Queen Alicia has promised an engineering sample of the Arcee's engine to all nations involved. At Gransel Palace, once they all sit down, the Queen asks Chloe of her opinion on the suspect. Chloe gets a chance to demonstrate the future deduction skills and political understanding necessary of a ruler, and Queen Alicia agrees with her reasoning. Rather uncharacteristically, Olivier grows serious and questions Queen Alicia on the timing of the non-aggression pact. She, as the others, has noticed how tense the situation has become in Crossbell State, a sovereign city-state located right between Erebonia and Calvard. She proposed the treaty in an attempt to quell some of the tensions, despite the rather inopportune timing for Liberal, which is just now recovering from the coup attempt in FC. At the Erebonian embassy, Muller shows us to Ambassador Cranaw. He says that no one in the Empire would dare go against the king's wishes to sign the treaty. The ambassador suspects the opposition parties in Calvard. In a skillful play of politics, Chloe questions what Chancellor Osborne thinks of the signing. This Iron and Blood Chancellor has recently expanded Erebonia's territory through the annexation of many smaller states around its borders. Surprisingly, it happens that he was the person who suggested the signing of the treaty to the king. Lastly, the crew hits up the liberal news to speak with Niall. Unfortunately, he has no information that they don't already know, but does share some helpful reporter's intuition with them. Returning to the guild, Agate reports that the names Ren gave for her parents were not in any of the airship company records from the past year, which is pretty suspicious. Later on, after the different members part ways for the night, Estelle and Ren have a chat in their shared hotel room. Ren asks why Estelle looked so sad when they entered the room. Since it was the one that she and Joshua stayed in during FC, it's understandable that Estelle is saddened by the memory. But the Estelle we all know and love is mostly sad because she can't do anything to help him wherever he happens to be at the moment. The two eventually head to bed. There's a brief scene that shows Shara and Annalise finding the remnants of the intelligence division at the Sky Bandits' old hideout from FC. They find a cryptic message about a person successfully preparing the chairs and tables for a tea party. Annalise and Shara are then ambushed by some intelligence division soldiers. After the men are defeated, Campanella, Enforcer Zero of Ouroboros, introduces himself to them. He causes the defeated men to explode, then takes his leave. But it turns out the soldiers are archaisms, as Father Kevin makes his appearance from behind the tents. The scene switches to the Capuas taking on a group of those same archaisms shaped like the intelligence division. Joshua appears to be working with them as he deals the final blow. It turns out that they were the ones to leave the info for Shara and Annalise to find. They have decided to take on the archaisms so the guild can focus on solving the tea party riddle. The scene shifts to morning where Estelle and Agate are reporting their discoveries to Colonel Sid. Sid shares that Ren's parents have not passed through any of the regional gate posts in Liberal, though. Just then, a soldier comes in and reports that remnants of the intelligence division have been spotted in the Bose region the night before. The group returns to the guild. As this is all being discussed, Ren quietly slips out the door. They visit all the places Tita and Ren explored yesterday in pursuit of her. At the airship landing port, they encounter Olivier, who had just seen Muller off to Bose to recover the Capua's old airship, the Bobcat. During this time, Ren quietly approaches from behind them. As they're returning back to the guild, right before Estelle enters, Ren slips a letter from Joshua into her hands. It says to meet him at the Garoon Gate at sunset. Agate tells her she better get going, and Estelle takes off for the gate. When Estelle gets to the meeting spot on the wall, she meets Father Kevin there, but no Joshua. It turns out Kevin had also received a letter that told him to meet someone at the same spot. Suddenly, they are ambushed by strange flying archaisms. After they fend them off, Kevin points out that they look like the archaisms down in Gransel Palace, but seem more recently made. This slip-up from Kevin sets off alarms for Estelle, since he shouldn't know about the things below the castle. Guards interrupt them, and once the two get away, Estelle confronts Kevin, believing him to be a suspicious character. He says the letters, which share the same envelope design, are probably forged handwriting, then promises that he'll explain more about himself once they get back to the guild. Back in Gransel, they meet up with Butler Philip looking for the Duke. To their shock, everyone has been knocked out by some sort of sleeping agent. A letter left at the scene details that the suspect has taken Ren and the Duke hostage. Shara and Annalise arrive at the guild, and the group is able to piece together the clues as to what this tea party means. Since the phones have been broken, Annalise is sent to relay the information to Colonel Sid at the Herb Royal Villa. It's up to Estelle, Shara, and Kevin to figure out where else the tea party will be, considering that Gransel Palace is well fortified and defended. Sieg arrives to guide them to the harbor area of the palace city, where they're greeted by intelligence division attack dogs. They begin searching the warehouses and end up having to save some hostages, who tell them that the intelligence division men have stolen the new engines. The group hurries to find where they went. Finally, they find the right warehouse, but they're too late. The engines have already been installed into a new high-tech tank driven by former Captain Amalthea. She plans to use the firepower to force the Queen to hand over the currently imprisoned former Colonel Richard. Before she can leave the port district, she's stopped by a division of the Royal Guard and his captain, Julia Schwartz. The tank contains a gospel inside and shuts down all the cannons and ordnance. However, Kevin pulls out an artifact that used to belong to the former mayor of Rouen. Kevin is able to neutralize the gospel, and now it's up to the group to take on the tank. After they defeat the machine and Amalthea, the Duke comes out of hiding. There's no Ren to be found though, because she happens to be the one who orchestrated this entire tea party. She successfully tricked everyone involved, and Ren formally introduces herself as Enforcer 15 of Ouroboros. Her parents are really just manufactured Orbo puppets like those who wore the guise of the Intelligence Division. She calls down a giant archaism called Potter Mater, which takes the gospel from the tank and stuns everyone with its capabilities. Everyone catches up just in time for Ren to say farewell, taking off into the night sky on Potter Mater. Fast forward to morning, and Cassius brings in Richard to get Amalthea to talk and answer questions. And back at the guild house, everyone's reeling from the shock of a small child like Ren being an enforcer for the society. But Estelle cheers everyone up by promising to drag Ren out of Ouroboros. Father Kevin arrives and finally introduces himself as more than just a wandering priest, but as a Gralsritter of the Septian Church. Olivier explains that they are charged with investigating and collecting all artifacts that are found throughout the continent. This is why he was in possession of former Mayor Dalmore's staff the night before. He has been sent by the church to investigate the society and the Aureole. They all agree to work together the next time they meet, then Kevin heads his own way. The guild gets another phone call about how the Sky Bandits took back their airship, the Bobcat, in Bose last night. Back at the Ouroboros hideout, Lo congratulates Ren on a job well done, while Ren reports that she really liked Estelle. The professor and Campanella also appear, and Wiseman says he plans to ask Estelle to join the society. Back in Gransel, Estelle and company prepare to head to Roland. Niall and Dorothy speak with Estelle privately. Dorothy hands Estelle a photo of Joshua on the Bobcat before it took off last night. Unsurprisingly, Estelle is rather shaken at the news. And this is where part 1 of the summary for Trails in the Sky second chapter ends. Next time we'll begin by taking a look at what Joshua and the Capuas have been up to. I hope this video was enjoyable, and consider subscribing so you don't miss out on the next part. Until then, take care. See ya!